everybody. Welcome to another live. While we wait for all of you guys to come on in, I'm going to just talk a little bit about what's coming up, and then I'll introduce my lovely guest. And we're going to talk about her amazing book. I can't wait for you guys to find out all about it. It's so exciting. All right, so next show after today, because I think you guys kind of, if you subscribe to me, you'll kind of have noticed that I had a bunch of videos planned and then they all got like rearranged because I wanted to fit Jen in.
I didn't know that.
But the next show actually is on the 10th of August. So because of the long weekend and stuff like that, there's going to be a bit of different spacing. Normally I do every 2 weeks, but for the next couple of months, that's going to be a little bit off. But the next show is on August 10th about light language, and I have 3 amazing guests that are going to be there. So there's going to be 4 of us all talking about light language, what it is, how it manifests for each one of us, because it all kind of manifests differently for each one of us. So come and hang out if you're interested in light language at all. And then the show after that is actually going to be a Q&A with Jen. Again, I'm going to have her on again after the book releases. So you guys watching today or watching on the replay, please go check everything out. Kind of, if you're interested in the book, watch for it to come out, because then that Q&A is going to be basically, I guess, a couple of weeks after the book releases. So read the book, bring your questions, and we'll have a bunch of fun. So Jen, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you, and then tell us all about your book.
That's a wide open door there.
Yeah.
So about me, I guess, I'm oh golly, where do I even start? I love how Tanis and I just say we do stuff, right? Because there's just so many things places I could go with this. But I'm a registered psychotherapist, certified Canadian counselor, intuitive life coach. That's kind of my day job. Right. And then I do the spiritual work, and I like to kind of say that I'm the light workers psychotherapist, right? Because we look at, therapy quite differently when we understand energy and the way that it shows up in our experience and all of that. So that's a little bit about what I do. And then the writing, right? I love to write, and I've done a whole bunch of different kinds of writing. But the book that you want to talk about today is very different than I've done before. So where in the past, a lot of my stuff has been mental health related. It's been, with EMDR or tapping, even spheres of consciousness. There's a spiritual component to it, but it is about our overall well-being. Whereas this new one is very different.
Well, before you reveal the title of the book, I'm just going to say hello to Hypnicity. Hi, Hypnicity.
Hello.
Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for joining us.
And she just reminded me that I was going to post a banner, because if you guys have any questions while we're going through and chatting about the book, we can't reveal too much because the book hasn't come out yet. But if you have any questions for Jen, feel free to post them in the comments.
Yeah.
So, drum roll. What's the book?
Well, to Hypnicity's comment. Yeah, so the book is called The Lyran Legacy. It's going to be book 1 of the Starlit Paths series. I say book 1 only because this has ignited a remembering for people. And so our hope, and what seems to be what's happening, is that through this remembering, other people are getting their stories as well. And so this book in particular is going to be a little bit different because it is the first book of the series. And so it's in 3 parts. The first part is going to be the history, the galactic history. And it's really my remembering of that history. So to give an understanding of what things were like then, all about the Orion Wars and what that looked like, how things unfolded for all of the different races that were involved in that. And then part 2 is my story.
Okay.
Right. And that's written like a novel, right? Very much just telling that story from my perspective, and what it was like living through that experience.
Mm.
Right. And then the third part is a bit of an appendix.
Okay.
And so we're going to have the history of Earth, right? And how the galactics impacted the Earth. So we're going to look at different, very significant time periods on Earth where the galactics were highly involved in our evolution.
Right.
And then we've got the Galactic Codex, which was the original codex that we made back then. So you'll learn all about it. Formation of the Galactic Federation and all of that in the book. And so the codex is in there. And then there's a glossary of terms, which is in its own way kind of its own book around a lot of these different spiritual things that we're going to be talking about in the book that arise, understanding about the different races, all of that kind of stuff is in there. And then the final part is just names and how to pronounce it. Because again, we're I had a bit of a struggle kind of bouncing between the Lyran words that were coming and how much of that I actually put into the text and how much I just use our terminology. So I'll mention things and then I kind of just use our wording after that. But yeah.
Hi, Millie. Millie just popped in. She says good afternoon. Hello. And then Hypnotisty was just asking, she's like, I missed the beginning. So what's the title of the book? So it's actually in the subject of the YouTube video, but if you want to say it again there, Jen.
It's the Lyran Legacy. Mm-hmm. So I've been saying Starlit Paths. Starlit Paths is the series title, right? But the Lyran Legacy is the book.
Well, because I think your hope is like there might be a Pleiadian legacy and an Arcturian legacy, and maybe
exactly. So Starlit Paths is originally that was what it was going to be, was just Starlit Paths with the subtitle The Lyran Legacy. But with the unfolding that has happened, it seems like there are others who are being called and have actually started writing and channeling their stories. And so it made a lot more sense to to make the series Starlit Paths and then just have each book have its own title.
And I'm so glad you're putting in a glossary and like a list of names and like how to pronounce them and everything, because I love when authors do that, because it just, especially when you're reading a book, it just helps the universe, you get your fingers into that universe just that little bit more. Brings it, for those of us reading it that haven't experienced it firsthand, it kind of brings it to life for us. I know the little bits that you kind of shared with me of the book, I think I talked to you kind of about it. It feels like my own history in a sense. And I hope that everybody else, when they go to read it, will feel the same way. Especially those of us that are starseeds.
Yeah, well, and that's it. And so I even, on the webpage, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but I have on there about this galactic remembering, because those of us who are starseeds, it does open that door to remembering what it was like then. And I know, Tanis and I both have talked about it on Tulu Talk, and Lisa was talking about it with us as well when we did the Galactic Gab.
Right.
And one of the things that we've been finding is that this particular lifetime has a lot of relevance to the lifetime that we're in right now. And so having it come through with such a vivid memory around it has actually allowed for us to tap into the energy of what it was in that lifetime and bring that forward, which is something the world needs right now.
Do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about that, like how the book came through? I know you've, as you said, mentioned it on like Galactic Gab and Twillo, but for those of maybe who don't follow you on either of those, do you want to maybe just Cole's notes?
Absolutely. And I don't know how much detail I've actually gotten into about that. But there was a night a while back where I was introduced to the Akashic. And I thought, this is wild. Being able to remember, it was almost as if the dream put me through a Rolodex of lifetimes.
Wow.
And so this particular lifetime was just one of these lifetimes that came through. And so I wrote them all down and thought, okay, this is interesting. But then I didn't do anything with it.
Okay.
Right. So I sat with that for a while. And then more and more, this particular lifetime kept coming through. And I'd have a little bit more that I'd remember. And I kept getting, okay, just write it down. Okay, so write it down, write it down.
Yeah.
Eventually, the notes were getting pretty extensive. To the point where they said, okay, we want to give you the history because it's important and it's paralleling things now. And you're going to need to actually bring this to the world. And of course, if you know me at all, my original thought was, what? You want me to do what? I'm sorry. What? And so, I kept writing it down. And after quite a while of this, probably it was over a year or so of just memories coming in, I finally went, okay, let me write this into a book and organize my thoughts and my notes that were all over the place. Timelines were a complete blur. I'm going, okay, I have this memory and then that one, and this one came before that one, I think, but then this one, right? So trying to figure all of that out. And then I got to the point where I thought, okay, this is a nice little story and it's giving a good history and all of that. I think I'm good to go. Somebody who's never written a novel or a book like this before.
Yeah.
Right? So I started talking about it. Silly me.
Yep.
Silly me. Because at that point, it was really in its infancy still.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say, okay, let's work on editing this. And then all of a sudden, 3 new sections come in.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, it wasn't ready. Okay, sorry. Here, no, let's work on this. And then another whole big thing would come through, and it just kept unfolding that way.
Mm-hmm.
And what was super cool is, as I would share it, somebody would say, oh, this is triggering this memory in me. And then we would talk about it, and then whole big scenes would open and go, oh, okay, now I have access to so much more information. And so also discerning, okay, what is it that I'm meant to include? What is it that maybe I'm not meant to include, but somebody else is meant to include? So there was a bit of that happening as well. But well, as you know, there's been some phases of
yes
to go through it. But what's been really, I don't know, I know what word to use. I want to say fascinating, but no, it's not. It's more than that. Is recognizing the energies.
Yes.
So being able to have a knowing of what the energies felt like in that lifetime from different people. And then, I said this on Galactic Gab with Lisa, meeting Dr. Lisa Thompson, and going, I know you.
Right.
Know your energy. And then being able to confirm that was indeed who she was, and that she had her own knowing of it in her lifetime.
Soul connections.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned too that there was some things that were reminding you of
Yes.
with
well, and it was
for you.
For me, it wasn't even like I didn't even at that point have the full book. It was just that like that even like the little taste of knowing, and it was just like boom, and then like this whole other door just opened, which has been amazing. So I'm hoping, I honestly am hoping that that happens for other people reading the book. That's actually my deepest hope, honestly, is that people,
Yeah.
one, enjoy the book, but two, that maybe they have their own kind of, awareness that comes up for them upon reading it. Because the other thing too, I was finding with the parts that I've read is that, hearing stuff elsewhere from other people and that it's the same, it's jiving. I'll use the word the jiving, but it's just the synchronicities are there. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, it's the same shared memory. It's that collective, and we talk about collective consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what came through too, is this idea that, and I actually wrote this on the site, that it's more than a book. It's a soul activation.
It really
And
is.
it sure did that for me as it
Yeah.
came through. I felt that activation, and I felt a transition within myself and my own energy as I opened to that. And for the few people that I have shared snippets with about the book, it's been the same.
Yeah. Well, and I know you talked about that familiar, finding those, that energy's there now, finding them in this life. But even I think we've, you and I have talked about that the dynamics a lot of the time seem to even be the same,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. That the dynamics from that time are still kind of the same now. And I mean, if you want to talk about it, we talk past life, but
You're
at this
talking
point, it's
about it, and I'm
parallel
like,
life, right?
full goosebumps.
Because it is parallel life at this point, right? Because you still,
Absolutely.
I'm going to use the term character. I know it's you, but in another life. But the character that you write from the point of view from, you still interact with her now in this current life, right? You still step into that role.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's been really fascinating too, to see the unfoldment of it and how it has allowed me to step into things that me in my own energy would never have stepped into.
Right.
Or been willing or open to step into, just because I don't have I don't feel like I have a knowing or an understanding, or how the human mind gets in and goes, well, I don't know enough about this to talk about it or whatever.
Yeah.
But what's been amazing is the confirmations that I've gotten as I'm sharing snippets and having people go, holy crap, yeah, that resonates. Or they'll tell me something about the way something is, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to fact check that because I don't want to write that if that's not. And then sure enough, I look it up and I'm like, oh, that actually is true. Okay. Yeah.
Well, what I love too, from the book, is that you describe all, you're Lyran and yourself, but that you describe all these other ET races we would have never even thought about, or because we hear, the ones that, popular culture, I guess, has kind of created for us, but that there's, ones that are, I guess we'll say corporeal, but then there's ones that are just pure energy. And there's this huge kind of expanse of cultures, and which I absolutely love too, that you kind of delve into the cultural pieces just as much as the story. So do you want to talk a little bit maybe about that? I know we haven't, we'll talk about too when this book's coming out, because I know everybody wants to know that, but
absolutely. Well, and you're talking about all the different races, and what's really interesting is I was actually given quite a bit more in terms of different races that are out there. And I was given a lot about even hidden races that didn't reveal themselves during that war and what was going on. Right. And so it's been, for me, there's been a piece of sitting with that, knowing, and really waiting for them to give me permission to share that they even exist.
Right.
With the world. And so I originally had gotten it, and because it was in all my notes, I had put it in the book. And, I was reading through it actually with my aunt at one point, and she said, these are beautiful races. And I said, yeah, they were the hidden races. And as soon as I said it, and she was like, well, Jen, if they're hidden, and I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling the exact same thing right now. And
Yeah,
so I
not
pull it.
yeah, not the time
Uh,
yet.
yeah, exactly. But it doesn't mean that there isn't still a plethora of different races that are still
Right.
being talked about and introduced and shared about in the book.
Mhm.
But all of that to say that what we think we know about what's out there
Yeah.
and what is actually, out there in terms of diversity, is we barely scratch the surface.
Right. I'm just gonna say hello to a couple more people here. So Kat said she popped in. She said she can't stay long, but we'll definitely rewatch. And then
Awesome.
Rush has popped in too.
Hey,
Hello.
Rush. Thanks for joining us.
So I know you mentioned the Orion War. So maybe for those that maybe aren't aware of what it is, are you able to maybe just give a brief kind of, just because I know like when you kind of start reading the book, you kind of delve right into it. But
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called the Orion Wars. And I actually went back and forth for a little bit in terms of that because it's also known to a lot of people as the Great Galactic War.
mhm,
Right? But this is, it's interesting because the star system and the way that it is right now is actually very different than the way it
okay,
was billions of years ago.
yeah,
A lot has changed over the course of, that time. But at where we were, Orion wasn't just this one kind of sector constellation. It was much bigger than that. And so the war that took place, specifically, people also call it like the Lyran Draconian War, but I feel like that is really taking away from how much this war impacted everyone involved.
mhm,
Um, and so, yes, it was, that was a significant part of it. And I do talk about that in the book. But the Orion Wars really took place over a longer period of time. And it was truly a great divide, which that
mhm,
idea of the Great Galactic War is so true. There were multiple sides, even though
right,
we talk mostly about the two main sides. There were
mhm,
other things going on. And as I said, there were other races that, you know,
mhm,
were hiding or kept themselves out of it and were able to not be brought into it. But that it's pretty significant and it's paralleling today
right,
and a lot of what's happening right now and how the world itself is being very divided. And
mhm,
so part of what I talk about in the book is that the war itself, yes, there was, this idea of needing to conquer and survival and things like that involved, but there was also a lot to do with the ideologies
right,
of the different races that were involved and how much of a divide there was in terms of those belief systems and how we operated. And that caused a significant rift as well.
mhm,
And I mean, it's still happening.
right, right. And I think that's going to be a big part of it too. Is that yeah, as you said, it is so relevant for right now. And I think you were saying like they were kind of getting pushy of like you need to release it now, you need to release it now. It's relevant for now. You got to get it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a push to get it done. And even though I had a couple people say, releasing it in the summer months is not
Mhm.
the best because people are away and this and that. But I just got very clearly no, Lionsgate is the day.
There you go, guys. You heard it here first.
So August 8th is going to be the release of the digital version. So it'll be
Okay,
on Kindle and the digital version will be released at that point. And then pre-orders for the book are also going to be set up. It's just my ability to organize all of that
of
is
course.
still like I'm still figuring out what that world of
Mhm.
like pre-order and stuff like that looks like when it comes to actual
Yeah.
books. But yeah, the goal is to have the digital copy released
Mhm.
um, on August 8th. And I want to do like a pre-order offer,
Yeah.
but that's
Ooh,
really hard to do
right.
because if you do the pre-order on say Kindle, I don't get the information. And I don't know when, like, if somebody's done that or not. So I'm trying to figure out kind of how to navigate that, which is why on the website I set up right now, because it's not in pre-order yet. If you email me from the website, I will know. And then as soon as you get the pre-order, just let me know and we'll be able to go from there. But I'll let you know when it's available and what's going on. So this is my way of trying to kind of figure out how to navigate all of that.
Well, and I think that's one of the other things you kind of said is like, you didn't realize like how many steps, like, to like, I didn't even, I'm like, me, like kind of having accompanied you through the process a little bit. I'm like, I don't know if I will ever publish because
if they weren't pushing it, I don't know that I would do it.
Yeah. Well, do we want to show them the website? Maybe while we're talking about it, do we want to pop it up?
Sure.
And Hypnoticity says 8/8 is her 33rd wedding anniversary.
Oh, awesome.
Their wedding anniversary.
Although I'll probably see you online probably before then and up until, but yeah, happy anniversary.
So you guys are getting a sneak peek, because I actually, right before we went on, Jen showed me this website. So you guys are seeing it here first along with me, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So most of you know sorry?
Kat just said, I like the 8/8 like an infinity symbol. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's Lionsgate, and of course Lionsgate is, you know, connected to Suckmet, which is, you know, like all of the kind of connections there and that whole Lyra origin and all of that. So there's okay. So yeah, let's see if I share my screen.
Yeah, and
my main website, which you guys, those of you who follow me have probably seen before, is the My Holistic Self. This is my counseling site, my business site. But then I also have the Passenger Consciousness site. But if you scroll down to the bottom of the main site, you'll see the publications that are there. And coming soon is this book that we don't quite see yet, which brings us to the webpage for the book. And it's Discover Your Cosmic Heritage. And it's still a work in progress for the site. But you'll see here that he's holding a book. And this is actually...
we need to switch to the other screen, or the other tab there. There you go.
There we go.
Really cute.
Yeah. So I guess the other piece to this, which I should mention, is that this is a book, it's totally standalone, but there's also some other offerings that have come through since doing this. And one of them is this star message that our little friend here is holding up for us. And the star message guide is something that is also going to be available. So I'm just doing the final kind of bits and pieces of getting that together. And so again, you'll see there's some pre-order here. I want to do kind of a live group session. And then, you know, slight reveal for the cover. Those of you who have seen the cover for even the show today, you get a little bit more of a reveal. And then, the astrology starseed frequency report, which is going to give you an astrological reading based on your starseed stuff, then a frequencies, which is in the gene keys. That also has some starseed information. And then there's like this whole other book attached to it about how to do starseed readings and all that information. And then finally the compendium, which again, coming soon, because I don't have the cover yet sorted for that. And so if you're interested in getting just information when things go live, send me an email. I'll put you on the list, and I'll be happy to share the information as it comes.
I'm just going to post now, everybody in the chat there. There is the link that you can share or like copy and paste, I think, into your URL that will take you directly to that page. You can also access it through Jen's My Holistic Self as well. If you have that page already bookmarked, but that's the direct page to sign up. And I'll be going there after the live. So I'll be adding my name to that list.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Kat, yes, she does. Do you want to let Kat know there what your channel is?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is My Holistic Self. So here, let me see if I can give you the link. It's just at My Holistic Self on YouTube.
Yeah, you do a bunch of stuff on like human design, and you do your every Monday. You do a chat with Tanis for Twillo Talk, which where you guys do authentic conversation, which is awesome.
Here, I'll give it to you, Kaylee, and let you put it in
Yeah.
because it told me it wouldn't let me put my comment in. I don't know.
I think it's also, I also put it in the description. I think I put all of your links in the description down below, but.
Perfect. Thank you.
There we go.
Yeah, so you'll get to see all the different stuff that goes on there. So there's Twiller Talk every Monday. Tanis and I are live at 5, and then our Galactic Gab, which is once a month, with Dr. Lisa Thompson as well. Tanis and I also do monthly messages. So once a month we're live doing readings, and I'm also doing Beyond Being Human offers different podcasts, and so I'm doing For the Love of Mystics. So there's 2 episodes up for that. So yeah, lots of fun stuff that is available there.
And Kat said she subscribed, so there you go. And so you mentioned the compendium. So that came about, I think, because you said like you had all of this stuff come out and you're like, I can't fit this all in one book.
I actually had one of the first people who did a read through for me, who helps, people who want to publish their books. And she said, Jen, this is great, but there is a lot in here. And, talk to me a little bit more about practicality. Like if you want to sell this like one massive book with all of this stuff, it might actually be a little overwhelming.
Because the book is over 300 pages as it is without that in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can just imagine what it would have been with the other part, because the workbook right now, the compendium as it is 123 pages.
Right.
So, and the book itself is like 370, I think, something like that. So it made sense to start separating. And then again, the Starseed Guide is another 150 pages, give or take, because the book component of that they gave me in terms of how to identify all the star seeds, plus it goes through each of the different races and all of their key traits and how that shows up in our lives, but like roles that we can take. I mean, there's so much information in it. And that alone is, I want to say 90 pages.
Oh, wow.
Right. So if I had it all in the book, like I originally had wanted, or originally had, I don't know if wanting was the right word, what I just did, because I didn't know any better, it would have been quite a large book. But the compendium is really cool. For me, I loved that it came through because there's one section of it that is all just practices and how we had done practices on Lyra, in the Pleiades, just different things that had come, that had come through that we had done, and then how to bring them forward to today.
Cool.
And then another section was Harmony of the Cosmos. So I talk about some of the songs and rituals in the book, but then there were very specific ones that they wanted me to bring forward. And so the lyrics for the songs and the way that we had done certain rituals are in there.
Cool.
What else? Celestial timekeepers. So about the seasons and being connected with the rhythm. Very different than the way that we are today. Kind of closer to how we were, many of years ago, thousands maybe, where we were more connected to the natural rhythms of the earth and things like that. And so looking at how we were connected to the rhythms of the stars.
Right.
And way that things would move and shift, and the impact that that has on us. So it talks about that in there. And then you get a section that is the eternal journey. And this is the way a Lyran life path went. So everything from our starseed infancy all the way through to that celestial sage and return stage of life.
Right.
And how we would, transition through and what that looked like. Because to get into that in the book was, again, it would have taken a lot of time. And I talk a bit about the life stages only because certain things that happened because of the war actually caused us to transition sooner than we normally would have. But I thought that it would be relevant to kind of share what that was like and the time we took and how we spent intentional time doing different things within those stages. Because I really feel like we don't live for thousands of years anymore, but
I have tons of time to do all the things I want to do, right?
But I do feel like we are still being called to have these different experiences and to form these types of relationships and to learn in ways that we did then, which is very different than the way that we are today.
It all just sounds so amazing. Like I mean, as I said, I've seen bits of it, but I can't wait to see like the finished product, because the hints, especially even that the Starseed, I guess, guide or whatever you want to call it, I've only seen like tiny little glimpses of it. So, and the artwork, guys, is absolutely beautiful. It's just all set up so nicely. As Jen said, the electronic version is going to come out first, but for those of you that like paper copies like myself, there will be a paper version that will, or a soft, like a, I guess, paperback version that will come out. And I think you'll find out all that through that sign up link where you can go and
as I get the information, then I'll be sending it out in the mailing list. It'll go out through the blog and stuff like that. So if you sign up, you'll get the info.
Exactly. Yeah. So go sign up. So the book, your Lyran, did you know kind of a bit about your Lyran heritage before you kind of got the download of the book, or was that did that go hand in hand?
It went hand in hand. It's interesting. So as a child, I could see things and knew that there was more out there, but I didn't have an understanding of it. And I didn't have a framework at that point in time to really understand what was going on. And so again, here's a kid seeing all kinds of stuff, and some of it was really cool and some of it really wasn't. And so I said, okay, that's it. I don't want to see any of this. Right. So then I spent a good chunk of my life knowing that there was something, but not necessarily connected to it.
Right.
I could still sense that there was stuff happening around me and energies and all that, but I didn't really have any context for it. And then as I opened to it again, different things started to come through. And I know that the stars have always been a fascination for me. I've always loved looking up at the night sky. I still remember I was in probably high school at the time, and a group of friends and I went to the Poconos, to a friend's cottage. And if you know that area at all, there's nothing there. So you get to see clear night sky. And being able to actually see the Milky Way, to see it with the naked eye to such depth and detail. And I laid on a picnic table with my friend and just stared up at it. I have no idea how long we were out there. I didn't want to stop. And there was a moment of, this is home. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I think that was my first kind of opening to that.
Yeah. There's something more.
Yeah. And and then through, I guess, that first dream that I talked about with the
Mm-hmm.
Akashic, I
Mm-hmm.
was given several different lifetimes. I
Right.
realized that I'd had a Lyran lifetime even before the one I
Okay.
talk about. And I had decided that I also wanted a draconian lifetime because I wanted to understand what that was like,
Interesting.
to be in that time. And then I had the lifetime of the book,
Right.
right? So I think that there is a lot of experiences that opened to me that I hadn't been aware of
Mm-hmm.
at all since this had started to come through. And then there's
Right.
also lifetimes on many other
Mm-hmm.
planets since then, until now. But I do believe that those of us who are star seeds, even though we can maybe feel connected to a particular one, in this case, I
Right.
feel very, very connected to the Lyran one because that's what has been meant to come through me.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that any of us are just one, because there's
Right.
been so much time in the in
Mm-hmm.
between.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. You talk about like having the Lyran lifetime, but then also, the Draconian or the Reptilian lifetime. And I think you in the book, because you talk about, as you said, the history, but that there's not just good and bad. Like there's both sides. There were good and there were bad in both. Like you can't just kind of label one with one thing and one with another. That.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important piece of the narrative that needs to come forward, is
Mm-hmm.
that we can't just label something one thing and think that that's all that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I do talk about it in the book. I talk about the draconian origins,
Right.
where they actually come from. That was probably one of the first things that came through. And I went, is that true? Like, do we know about that? And so yeah, I talk about, and I'm not going to get into too much
No, no,
detail right now,
no.
but I talk
Go
about
read the
how
book.
they were pushed through the rift. And so this is a penal colony,
Right.
basically, of the reptilians,
Right.
and all that were put here in our galaxy. And so as I'm, getting this whole thing about the rift and what that means,
Yeah.
um, a couple things came through. And one was that because what the rift that they got pushed through was actually a portal to another
Right.
thing. And then I look in and I'm like, Draco actually does have its own
Sure.
little galaxy in it. And I went, okay, that's what you guys were
Yeah.
showing me. That's fascinating. And then
So
I
cool.
was given how Arcturus
Mm-hmm.
and the Arcturian stream actually didn't originate in our galaxy
Right.
either. They came in as a counterbalance when the
Interesting.
reptilians pushed the draconians through into
Mm-hmm.
Draco. And I went, I don't know about that. And then I looked it up, and sure enough, the Arcturus stream actually doesn't follow anything in the flow of the Milky Way. They do their
So.
own thing, and it's because they were not originally part of the Milky Way. They had
Mm.
come in, and I went, okay, you guys are giving it all to me.
Mind
Yeah,
blown.
exactly. It's been wild,
Yeah.
the information that has come through. And because, human design, that 1-3 part of me, that
Right.
one is like, know, for like, the fact, right? It
Yeah.
can't just be given. I need to know for sure. And so it was really quite fascinating to see that. And then another, part of it was when they were talking about Draco and the planets, and then they were actually giving me specific
Mm. Names.
constellation,
Yeah.
like names, and I'm like, okay, all right, this is
Cool.
really cool. So in the compendium, when we talk about communing with the stars and what that looks like,
Right.
they actually gave me which stars have which energy and what we need to
Wow.
connect with and all of that. So it was just a really incredible unfolding for me. And it's so funny because I would read through with the edits and stuff, and then I'd let it go. And Well, you know this. The
Yes.
story itself unfolded in multiple levels for me,
Yeah.
because the first time it came through with the grief. It
Mm-hmm.
came through with the sorrow, the sadness of what that war
Yeah.
did, and what I had to. I'm getting emotional just talking about it. What I had to navigate
Right.
in that lifetime, and so it came in hard and heavy, and I think that's why the book needed to take so much time,
Yeah.
is because I needed to re-heal.
Yeah. That grieving
So
process, right?
exactly, I needed to grieve it all over again, and hold space for that healing, so that I could tell this story from the
Mhm.
healed perspective of where I was
Right.
versus that wounded part. And that for me has been an incredible unfolding in my own experience,
Right.
to be able to move through that energy
Mhm.
again.
Well, and I think you dealt with the theme really well of, as you said, there are parts of it that are talking about, grief and loss, but then you have the other side of it where you're talking about, like, friendship and found family, and things like that, and appreciating differences.
Mhm.
As you said, it's very key. All those energies are so key for right now. Um, and so, yeah, I think you dealt with it absolutely perfectly.
Oh.
Um, yeah. But yeah, like you were talking, like it's developed, or it's still honestly developing, because I think you even messaged me last week, said, "Oh, here's another section that they want me to add." So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
they're like, it's done, it's done.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
you should probably put this information in.
So honestly, even though I've like read it, in theory, I've read it. The day before the release, you could add something that I've not read yet, and it would be a brand new book for me to read the next day.
It's yeah, it's I'd have to look back and see if I have actually, like, the very
Yeah,
original kind of way that it came
yeah,
through, and what it is to now. But I'm blown away by the ability for remembering to have
yeah.
such an impact
Hmm.
on our experience here.
Well, and it's
And
I think you kind of said it, like, even just growing up and then all this stuff coming about, but that it almost makes the world make more sense.
mhm. Yeah,
Um, you're like, I'm like, why? And then you read the book, you're like, oh, that's why. Like
yeah,
it's that.
yep,
Um, no, I
yeah.
love that.
That's happened quite a few times for me. I actually remember I was on a meeting, the what was it? It was the full moon meeting, actually, with Beyond
Okay.
Being Human, and the most recent one they did was for experiencers, and so it was
Okay.
experience of all different kinds, and we were
Hmm.
talking about, whether we had a cosmic experience or spiritual, angelic, whatever it was. And one of the people had an experience of actually being pulled into school with the
Oh,
Galactics.
wow.
And they're explaining it. And I'm like, this is the Celestial Academy. I talk about this in
This,
the book.
right.
And
Yeah.
this is exactly what you're talking about.
Hmm.
So it's just been super cool to have these completely unrelated, from people I have no idea who they
Right.
are,
Yeah.
sharing these different things and going, I know exactly what you're talking about. This
Hmm.
is this and this is that. And being able to connect the dots like that
Yes.
in ways
I
that
love that.
I never thought would be something I would be
Mhm.
doing.
So if anybody in the chat has any questions, feel free to post them in there too. So I'm referring back to my little like cheat questions
Yeah.
here. Make sure we covered everything. I think we did. I think we did a pretty good job.
Hmm.
Um, so some of the places, just because I put like some of the characters or some of the places, so I don't know if you're comfortable talking, because I know you don't want to give too much away, and I don't want to either. Um, but you'd mentioned like like Draco Galaxy and Arcturus, and so I guess like I mean, we can see the Pleiades. I think there's something on Facebook right now about like the moon eclipsing the Pleiades or somehow like merging or like going over top of them or something right now. So I guess there's that kind of connection piece even to us in this lifetime that like we can kind of draw those parallels to.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too. I mean, you're talking about like different celestial activities and things that are happening. And I know right now we're just entering a time with the asteroids.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And how that's coming through. And that happens fairly, like every year at around this time where we have this experience. Right. And okay, well, what is that about? And, what comes for me is that it's a remembering of when certain things happened in that lifetime that would cause us to have meteors and where they come from, right? So we recognize that they're pieces flying through space. And so this is a very, I want to say honored, but it's so much more than that, like a very sacred time.
Right.
Because it's connected to certain experiences.
Well, that's where you're talking about where they were more a seasonality versus like a set like time date, stamp. So you would talk about like maybe things weren't as rigid, like it wasn't, like from, November through to March is winter. Like it wasn't that like structured, I guess would be the best way to put it. And there's that, and I loved to, as you said, this series I think is going to be great for, as you said, the 1-3s, because you have the book, but then you also have the bonus stuff. Because I think I remember reading it through the first time and being like, oh, I wish you would talk more about this. And they're like, well, there's a completely other book, and I'm like, yes, more reading. But in that you talk about even the life stages, and I love that you say like there's a span of time, like it could be 400 to 600, anywhere within that period. There's the ability to transition because we all grow and learn at our own pace and differently. It's not like with us humans here on Earth where, it's 18 or 21 or whatever, and you're officially an adult. Good luck, have fun. It's a lot more of a gradual kind of easing in and transition of when you're actually ready. And sometimes maybe you're not ever ready, but
hey, that happens too.
Yeah. So no, I absolutely love that, and I wish we could maybe get back to having life being like that.
Yeah. Well, and so much was different too about the way that we experienced life. I mean, obviously the war changed a lot of how we were and the way that we transitioned through. But that being said, having memories of what it was to actually transition back to the stars and have that conscious ceremonial awareness of, okay, I'm ready to leave the corporeal form and to go back into the oneness, and being able to make that choice. Right. Which is not something, obviously, with the war, and not something even that we really think about anymore today. In terms of being able to recognize the stages, and when we're at that place of, okay, I feel like I'm good here now. I'm ready to move to that next stage.
And I love
same with coming in.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just saying, same with coming in. I did, I want to say QHHT, is that right? The quantum hypnosis. I went ahead and did one of those after a lot of the book had come through. And one of the very opening chapter of the book is the Lyran history, but it's really the history of all of us and where we come from, and the energy that we come from, that we chose then to come into corporeal form, and having a memory of being that energy. And coming to, settle and transform into something more corporeal, and blown away by that experience. But also, I don't have words to really explain what it was to feel that oneness that we are all still a part of. whether we're in form or not.
Yeah.
And we come from that and we go back to that. And that is an eternal oneness.
Right.
And so to have that experience, I talk about how each of the different experiences of this book has shifted me. I think that's probably one very significant shift that I still don't really have words for.
Yeah. And hey, that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked, because I mean, many of us have experienced loss, and that is a part of the book. But the big one that stood out for me is the idea of, like, family, for example, can leave us, but they're always still there. That knowledge and that energy and stuff is still there, is still accessible. We just have to, quiet ourselves enough to be able to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I loved being able to recognize this piece of, we still have our feelings, we still have our experiences. Even,
right.
We look at the galactics and we think, okay, yes, deeply spiritual and very advanced in a lot of ways from where we are, because they've,
Well,
and
they'd say
yet,
almost godlike, right? I mean, at least for prehistoric times, maybe considered godlike even, right? Yeah.
absolutely. And yet, there was a great morning
Mm-hmm.
that happened. And I talk about a bit about that moment where we had our own kind of crisis,
Right.
spiritual crisis of going, everything I believed in, I don't know
Right.
what to think
Mm-hmm.
anymore, because, there had to be a new evolution of understanding the role that everything has in our experience. And it's not just good,
Right.
right? The way that our mind defines it to be
Mm-hmm.
good, but understanding that all experiences have purpose and meaning, and that we can grow, and they're meant to transform us. And that's a beautiful thing, as
Humans,
hard as it was.
you say humans can be unsure, and so can other beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you,
And
Jen, so much.
existential crises are not just ours.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I was an extraterrestrial existential crisis. Yeah. Well, we're almost coming up to the hour.
Oh, wow. That
Yeah, I know,
flew.
right? Flew by. Always does. But I wanted to thank you before we pop off. Just say thank you so much for coming. And everybody, I will also post the link for those who are rewatching, or who didn't have a chance to see the link earlier. I'm going to post the link in the comments after the live's over, for that kind of pre-order notification sign up, as well as that page where you can kind of find out all the fun stuff that's going to be coming out along with the book. And the release date again, Jen, is
August 8th.
August 8th. It's almost here. So for everybody else, as far as my channel goes, the next show is on August 10th. We are talking about light language. I have 3 very special guests that are going to be in attendance that day. So there's going to be 4 of us all together talking about light language. If you want to come, bring your questions. You may even get to experience and hear some light language. And then the show after that is going to be Jen on again, but it'll be after the book release. So it's going to be at the end of August. And so hopefully you guys will have had a time to at least maybe start reading the book, or if not, read the entire book. And you can bring any of your questions that you have about the book, bring them at that time, and we'll have an amazing Q&A with Jen. And yeah, so I thank you all for being here. Jen, anything coming up that you would like people to tune into?
Sure. So on Monday, this coming Monday at 2:00, I'm going to be on with Gerald Tarot Stash, Laugh and Learn, another human design Laugh and Learn, and we're going to be talking about the rest of the profile lines.
Awesome.
And so if you're interested in learning about human design, join us for that. And then again, every Monday live at 5 with Tanis for Twillo Talk. And yeah, I think those are the main big things that I have on the schedule.
No, that sounds amazing. And yeah, so yeah, sign up to that link. And for me, like and subscribe down below so you don't miss anything, so you don't miss that Q&A when it comes along. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And I hope you guys all have a great rest of your weekend and a great rest of your week. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank
Bye.
you.